welcome to continue introducing yourself if you've only just joined us now. Just want to give a quick shout out to Gail. It's wonderful to have you here with your 2 cats. So today we're going to start with some housekeeping and introductions. I wonder, oh dear, just gonna mute everyone quickly just to reduce noise. So, sorry, just bear with me a sec. All right, so as mentioned, our wonderful community coordinator, Irma, will be keeping an eye out for any technical issues you might have. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need any help. For the best experience, we recommend using Chrome or Safari. If you're on a mobile app and can't see the video feed, we'd recommend try switching to a browser or, if possible, a desktop. The call is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording along with additional resources. Unfortunately, closed captions aren't available on this platform, but a transcript will be provided with the recording. And this session today will include a presentation followed by time for Q&A and an interactive discussion. So first and foremost, I'm thrilled to introduce my lovely co-host, Robin, a dedicated community guide, moderator, and Let's Get Them Pressing graduate. Robin, not to put you on the spot, but would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. I'm Robin. I have Bert, a mini Bernedoodle who's 4 years old, and Ernie, who is a very loquacious cat who is also 4 years old. And they have been learning since April 2024. And Ernie just said no. Apparently he hasn't been learning. They are quite the pair, and they love talking to each other. Ernie requests outside for Bert on his behalf sometimes, and they're great. I really love them. And we're on Instagram. I put my links, and TikTok and YouTube. I put my links in the chat if you're interested in seeing their progress.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Robin. As mentioned, we also have some of our guides with us today on call. It's awesome to have you all here. I'm just going to take a moment just to see if any of you would like to introduce yourself. So Kelly or Janine, if you'd like to jump in and just say hi real quick.
Hi, I'm Janine. I have 3 learners. I have a dog who's been pressing since 2021 and 2 littermate cats, one who caught on faster than the other. So the 3rd learner still needs me to suggest she use her buttons, but we've made some progress. So I'm sort of there with you guys and trying to get some fully pressing. But I put my handle for Instagram, Twiggy and her cat friends, in the chat. And I love sharing educational content as I figure things out. So if you have questions, hit me up in Circle or hit me up online at Instagram.
And I'm Polly. My camera is not working at the moment, but I just want to say that Janine is absolutely incredible and produces some of the best educational content. So definitely follow her on here. On this community as well as on social media if you're on there. And then my name is Kelly. I've been part of the community for 4.5 years, but I've had a learner for almost 2. He's 7 pounds. He was a massive challenge to teach. He needs everything to be on his own terms. He's allergic to coercion. He was very good at avoiding the button. So I went through pretty much almost every challenge you could with teaching a learner, and figured out sort of creative solutions around it that have worked for other learners that I've worked with. So I just say that in the sense of do not give up if your learner hasn't gotten there yet. Delmer took 5 months to start pressing independently. And I'm sure your learners can too with the right starting words and patience and belief in them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kelly. We really are fortunate to have them with us here today. Their advice is truly invaluable, and I can personally say that they've been a tremendous help to me and my learner, Jason, on our journey. Speaking of journeys, let me share a bit more about myself. I'm guardian to my learner, Jason, who's a young, curious cat, and we've been exploring the world of buttons for almost 4 months now. We're currently up to 17 buttons, and it's really been such a joy just learning how to communicate with him better. And I'm excited to share some tips and tricks that have worked for us, and hoping that will help you on your journey. All right, so let's have a look at today's agenda. We'll start off with going through a bit more information about who we are. We'll cover the keys to button teaching, so we'll look at modeling, first words, and target training. We also have some additional resources for you, and just a friendly reminder, this is not your only chance, and you are more than welcome to attend any other bootcamp if you'd like. If you have a family member that might benefit, or you just need a recap, feel free to RSVP. We also have different instructors, each with their unique perspective and learners. So there's always something new to learn. And that's the best part about this community. It's about sharing what's worked for us in our households. And hopefully that will help any new beginners as well. And as Irma has mentioned, we've enabled the Q&A function. So during the live discussion, our Q&A function will be enabled, and you can submit your questions by clicking on the Q&A button next to the message icon. Our goal today is to ensure you leave feeling confident. So we'll stay on the call as long as possible. If you do have other commitments, feel free to head out as soon as the presentation ends. We totally understand. I do see we have a fantastic group. We've got quite a large group of 42 people today, so thank you so much for joining. Because it's so big, we'll focus on beginner questions, but we'll address more advanced ones if time allows. For Bootcamp, we're here to get you off to a strong start and set you up for success. A little bit more about us. While Alexander Rossi and Christina Hunger started button teaching, Fluent Pet is the original button teaching system. So we offer different types of buttons, a fantastic app, and most importantly, a supportive community packed with resources to help you and your learner on this incredible journey. So our mission is to figure out how to teach cats and dogs and the animals we share this planet with how to talk, or an approximation thereof. And we believe pulling this off will take a village, a community that can develop and share button teaching tips and tricks, and work together to discover the most successful button teaching approaches. And that's where you will come in. Our success in this mission entirely depends on your success with your learner, because the more of us who progress with our button teaching, the faster we'll figure out just how far all of this can go. And you might be wondering, how far can all of this go? We think this video really paints a picture of what's possible here.
I don't hear audio.
Calvin, there's no audio.
Thank you, Robin. Let me just try and reshare real quick. I was trying to check in the chat real quick. So we'll go share, tab, oh, there it is. Okay, I'm going to give it a try. If you can just give me a thumbs up if it does.
The foundation for getting started with buttons is just a desire to connect. I can't remember the exact order, but I think she pressed stranger mad, and I was like, what does that mean? And then ouch paw. And then she came over to me and she put her left paw in my hand, and I was like, okay. And I looked between her toes and she had a foxtail stuck between her toes.
This was the stranger in her paw. She's got a mat between her toes.
The foundation.
Thank you so much. I do apologize for the audio blip in the beginning. Okie dokes. Just want to head back onto the previous slide. There were a few things I wanted to mention along with the video, but I'm not going to play it again, don't worry. So we just wanted to mention that it's not just Bunny who can do these amazing things. There are so many inspiring stories on the community that you can have a look at. And it's not all medical related either. For instance, there's a Catahoula mix scout who mixes the button water and then bone. And it took us a while to figure out, but it turns out she was asking for an ice cube. So what we're saying here is it's really amazing how creative they can be with such a limited vocabulary. And for today, we'll be kicking things off by exploring 3 essential concepts: target training, choosing your first words, and how to model. These fundamentals will set you up for success as a button teacher and help your learner to start pressing with confidence. So on to target training. We'll begin this step before diving into choosing words. And while target training isn't mandatory, it can be incredibly helpful in setting the tone and making it easier for your learner to understand how to press the buttons. This step is also particularly useful if you've started modeling, you've put the buttons down, but your learner isn't interacting with the buttons on their own yet. So here's a video of Alexis and Bunny, and in the video you'll notice Alexis and Bunny use treat as part of their target training, but if you'd prefer not to start a food button, you can choose any of your starting words and build from there. For Cat Guardians, we also have additional cat-specific tutorial coming up next.
Okay, so today we are gonna do a little paw targeting tutorial. Hi, sweetie. She knows something exciting is happening. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna condition a marker word. She's offering me kisses right now because she knows something fun is happening. Our marker word is yes. Anytime I say the word yes, it means that she gets a treat, and it means that she's on the right track when we're doing shaping training, which is what this is. So to condition a marker word, you can either use a clicker or a word. I'm gonna use yes. You just say the word yes and you give a treat. Yes. 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 So you'll want to do that for a little while and make sure that they have built that association. And then what you're going to do, she's offering anything she can. You're giving me kisses. That's really sweet. Yes. Good girl. So then we're going to start with a Tupperware. You're going to take a treat. Your dog sees the treat. You're going to put it under the Tupperware, and then you're going to wait for them to interact with it. She's using her nose. Yes. And as soon as she touches it with her paw, I say yes, and I give her a treat. Now, obviously, she's already done this a lot before, so she understands it. But what you would do if your dog doesn't interact with their paw at first is you would wait for tiny incremental successes. So at first, if she noses it, you can say yes and reward. That's good. You can add a little bit of movement to get them more interested if they're not interested in interacting with it. And if they just get close to it, reward that too, because the closer that they're getting to it, the more you can build successes instead of failures, the better. You can't over reward. You can under reward and they'll lose interest. Yes. But once they've got the paw consistently touching the object, then you can add the cue word, which is going to be, look at her, she knows what's going on. Which is going to be paw or touch or whatever you want it to be. For us, it's paw. So then I will show her the Tupperware and I will say paw. Yes. Paw. Yes. Good girl. And then what you want to do is you want to generalize it. So you don't want the cue paw to just mean I touch a Tupperware lid when you say that. So you want it to mean that I touch anything. So we have the stuffed animal, paw. Yes. Good girl. I have this book, paw. Yes. I have this watering can, paw. Yes. I have a slipper, paw. Yes. Good girl. And then, once you've gotten it to that point that she's generalized it well, then you take the treats out of the picture, take your tile with your button, this is an outside button, paw. Yay, good girl! And then instead of rewarding with treats, she knows that we're in a training session right now, so it's a little bit different. Instead of rewarding with treats, you reward with the action of the button. So once I say paw, she presses the outside button, then we go outside and we celebrate. And you can apply that to any button you're learning. I really hope this helps you guys.
So just to very quickly recap, target training is particularly useful if you want to get off to a fast start, if your learner shows no interest in pressing by themselves, or maybe if your learner is an established button presser who just needs to practice their technique or precision. I would just like to mention a slight caveat here in that all learners are unique in the way that they press. And Jason, my learner, is one for flopping on the buttons and also using his back paws. So I always make sure to honor any presses. We always say that what we're aiming to do in the beginning is presume competence. Sorry, my screen's gone mad. So next we'll be moving on to a more cat-specific tutorial. And this one is with Julie and her cat Loki. So it's just another way to help your learner push the buttons. Loki was already using her paws to grab things or tap Julie when she wanted something, so she caught on relatively quickly. The whistle you'll hear in the background is what she used as a bridge or marker to let her know she did something correctly and that the reward was on its way or coming. Julie prefers to use a whistle to a clicker because it leaves your hands free and it's not as loud, so less distraction on your hands. We find that cat learners in particular like to watch what your hands are doing.
I would
So
just
let's have a
also
look at
add,
that video. Yeah,
but just
go
also
for
add,
it.
Julie works in a zoo, so that's also where the whistle comes from.
Thank you so much, Robin. I also noticed that there's not many questions in the chat or QA as yet, so you are welcome to so long. If you have any questions that are popping up, you can pop them into the QA. Our guides will try and answer them in the meanwhile, and when we open up for the open discussion, we'll have more of an open discussion regarding any questions you've had. So let's play this video and have a look at Julie and Loki.
The first thing you're going to do is find a clear container and a treat to put under it, and then you're going to reinforce them for touching it. They might touch the side. What you're really looking for is the top, but at first you're going to reinforce anytime they touch it. Get a couple of good repetitions at this step until they're doing it really consistently. There she goes, touches the top one, gets a treat. Excuse my other cats doing other behaviors in the background. Your second step is to place the button under the container, and you can put the treat under there also if they need that extra motivation. But you're looking for the same thing, to touch the top of the container and then they get a treat. Just getting the idea that they're touching the top of something is what you're looking for. Now we have the button on the hex tile, and I put the clear container on it just as a little review, just to make sure we're still in the same spot. They're now both touching the top of the container, so they're getting rewards for that. And then we're going to take the container off and try to get them to touch the button itself. Now Loki's kind of grabbing the button. She's not activating it yet, which is totally fine. All I'm looking for is for her to touch the top of the button. You'll even see that sometimes Trouble and Loki will have a little bit of trouble getting to the button and they might touch right next to it. That's also fine at this stage. I have found that being able to move the tile back and forth kind of gets them a little bit more motivated to press harder because they're trying to catch it. So you're kind of making a game out of it. Now you're ready to have buttons on your soundboard. You may still need to cue them to press and still continue to shape how they press and how hard they press. But now you're ready to start doing all the modeling and giving them all the things they ask for.
Another fantastic video. And I just wanted to mention, for anyone who couldn't view the videos on this call, we will make them available in the community as well and provide links to this so you can view them at your leisure as well. Oops. Just having a quick glance at QA. There we go. So moving on to the meatier part of the presentation, let's dive into choosing starting words. And this is where we often find there's a bit more discussion in the chat, and our guides often have some great tips for choosing your starting words. But what you'll see in front of you is what we'd recommend. These are best practices that we've compiled over the last 4 years. So first and foremost, we'd suggest starting with 3 buttons. You want to use more than one button so that your learner understands that different buttons mean different things. We also recommend starting with 1 button per hex tile so that your learner has space to explore the hex tiles in the beginning. Next, you're wanting to pick buttons that are motivating and meaningful to your learner. We also want to make sure that they are easy and convenient to model. This is because we're aiming to model each button between 15 and 25 times per day. So make sure this is something that you can say yes to 15 to 25 times a day and be ready to respond every time your learner presses the button to reinforce the meaning. Now, if you're working from home or if you're not able to say yes every time, a verbal acknowledgement is also okay, but we want to make sure we're giving them a response in the beginning so that they know that this button has got a meaning. But ultimately, the more times you can say yes, the better it's going to be for your learner in the beginning. So we also want to make sure that they're not abstract, and we want to look for concrete and actionable words. So here are some examples of good starting words. And up next, we'll also go through a list of words that we feel you shouldn't start with. So we'll go through the list of buttons currently, and the first ones you'll see are play and toy. Play you can use as a more general word. So if this would be playing outside, playing inside, playing with their favorite toy or around the board, or you can use a more specific toy if that works better for your learner. If your learner responds very well to something like ball, this would be the starting word for you. Treat is another great starting word. Not only is it highly motivating for most learners, but it can be particularly useful during target training, as we've just seen. But some of you might be worried that your learner will spam the food-related buttons. And if you prefer, you don't have to include the food-related buttons right away. However, we have found that learners will find a way to communicate about food either way. And even if they don't have a specific word for it yet, we're still honoring their vocalizations and body language. So the buttons are simply an optional tool for them to use. And interestingly, once our learners realize that the food isn't a limited resource and it's something that they can ask for whenever they want, we often find that the urgency decreases and they gain a sense of agency as well. Okay, next up we have attention-seeking buttons like pets, scritches, and brush, which are great starting words. I found that scritches in our case was one of Jason's favorite early words, and I do think it's got to do with the human component, just spending time with them, and it's a highly motivating word for my learner, Jason. Another great choice is puzzle. It's also a common favorite within our community because not only is it a great source of enrichment for your learner, but it can also help slow down food-motivated learners who are frequently pressing for treats or food. So you can use it to redirect them to a fun food dispensing toy or licking mat. And this will also help with them spamming buttons if you find that they're pressing them too often. But you'll also see that in line with this, we've recommended slightly more abstract concepts like more and all done. And we'd recommend putting these down after your learner is pressing their first 3 words. You can start modeling these earlier on verbally, because ultimately these are the words that are going to help you put the brakes on once your learner grasps the concept of the press and starts making progress. So I'm going to check in with Robin or any of our other guides if they have any feedback they'd like to add before I continue here. Robin, Janine, Kelly, go for it.
I put this in the chat, but and one of the slides when you first started mentioning target training, there's a bullet on the side that you do it if you want to accelerate things or if your learner has no interest. I want to mention to all of you, you do not have to do the target training. It's going to be easiest and less work for you if you just consistently use the buttons 15 to 20 times a day, have your learner see that when the button gets hit, they get whatever. If they imitate you, then you're done with this. Don't think of this stuff as traditional training because you run the risk of, I have a learner who I did this with because I knew it was risky, but she wasn't pressing. So after a year and a half, I started working with her. So she's still, after 6 months, she can press, but she only does it when I come over to the board and I kind of have to gently guide her and hem and haw and hesitate. It's going to be much more natural if you just be patient in the beginning. Don't put any pressure on your learners. Just let them see this new thing in the house and the magic that it brings. It brings them more of the good stuff they like, or that stuff more frequently, or it gives them control of those things eventually. So don't get your buttons and start target training. At least that's my advice. again, because you run the risk of them thinking that it's something that you have to initiate. You want them to initiate. So just my 2 cents, but it's also been over the past couple of years, I've seen this happen often. And the human side of this is kids who are not speaking for whatever developmental reason, and they need assistive devices. They don't use target training. This whole system was evolved from how those children are taught. It's just imitation. So I'm going to be quiet now, but I just want to warn you all.
Thank you, Janine.
Yep.
Yeah, and Calvin, I think you touched on this with how Jason presses, but just to add, it doesn't have to be paw pressing. No, not all learners press perfectly like Bunny does. Some pressers are more inclined to press with their nose. Some cats press with their cheeks. Some are like Ripley and press with their entire bodies, and they're still accurate and meaningful. So don't pigeonhole your learner into a specific way of pressing. Let them do what's comfortable to you. Bert was a nose presser at first, and now he's transitioned to mostly a paw presser. And it's just what's comfortable for him, but he will still always press the treat button with his nose. I think it smells a certain way for him. But yeah, just let them be them.
Thank you so much, Robin and Janine. So yeah, to briefly go into a little bit more about abstract concepts, we want to make sure that when we add these, we're adding them in pairs. So soon and now, more and all done, just as examples. And this is so that we can model them in contrast to each other. Just as an example, I would model the word eat soon when I see it's almost time for dinner. And when it's time to eat and I put Jason's bowl of food down, I will model Jason eat now when it's time to tuck in. And that just highlights the contrast between the soon and now. For the last button, yeah, go ahead, Robin.
I'd love for Janine to talk about all done and more.
Okay.
Oh, now?
If she's willing.
Yeah. So my theory on all done and more is you can say those things verbally. Don't turn them into buttons yet. Get them working on their starter buttons and only introduce all done and more as a pair because they're contrasting, right? One ends the thing, one continues the thing. The soundboard is a place where they have as much say as you do. So you don't want to just have the demotivator all done and not let them fight back with more. That's going to be great. If they fight back with more, you're going to jump up and down because they understand that more, they understand an abstract button and it gets them more of that. So you're going to give them more. And then maybe you'll say all done again, and maybe they'll accept that, or maybe they'll fight you, but you guaranteed you won't have battles like that. I had some and they're awesome. But if you squish them down with all done too soon, you haven't let them feel their full power. So I advise people to get it to the point where they're pressing a lot. You're not prompting them. They're interrupting you. You're on your computer. You're on your phone. You're watching TV. The buttons are going off and you're saying yes to everything all the time to get them really excited about their new power. And then there's going to be a day where you're like, oh, that's the 30th time you've asked for whatever. And then, that's the day when it's time to introduce all done and more as the buttons. So don't tamp down their power until they felt their power is my philosophy.
Thank you so much, guys. And then for the last button, you'll see that we've added a few question marks. And this is because we'd recommend choosing a word that is truly unique to your household, something special between you and your learner. And in our example with Jason, it's his Christmas present, a feather toy. For Robin, this is their banana or catnip banana. But ultimately, you want to choose a button that's unique, highly motivating, and very specific to your learner. Even if it means going out and buying them a small toy to associate with that button, that would be my recommendation. Some additional tips and tricks would be to be very specific with your language. If you're still waiting for your buttons or you're not ready to start yet, you can start keeping a list on your fridge for a week just to compile all the words that you think you'd like to use. And try and use what majority of the household is already using, if possible, to remain consistent. Once again, just wanted to thank Janine and Robin for their input there as well. As mentioned, they are incredible help. And if you are stuck with choosing your starting words, I'd strongly recommend putting a post on the community. Our guides are always happy to jump in and offer some additional advice for you. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, and this is just to help you select effective starting words. So here's a list that we don't typically recommend beginning with. That said, you know your learner best, and these are simply best practices we've gathered over the past 4 years to help guide your journey. So some of the words we wouldn't recommend starting with are water, just because it's usually not highly motivating and is relatively hard to model. Outside, which initially does seem like a great starting button. In my case, unfortunately, it wasn't something that I could rapidly model 15 to 25 times per day or say yes to. If you live on the 10th floor, it's not going to be easy and convenient for you to model 15 to 25 times per day. And it's also weather permitting. So it's not something in the beginning that you can guarantee that you can say yes to with every press. Potty and poop are also rather difficult to model if you think about it. And this is because they look very similar to going outside. So especially if you have added an outside button to your board, adding a potty or poop button, we'd advise against, just because modeling it can look very similar. You're going outside with your learner, and this might create some confusion in the beginning. Similarly, walk or bone. Again, not words that we can rapidly model 15 to 25 times per day. People and pets are also relatively difficult for us to model for beginners, so we wouldn't recommend starting with the names of your household or your pets in the beginning, but rather wait for them to have some success with the buttons. And when you're on to button number 7, then you can start thinking about adding your name to the board as an attention-seeking button. Yes and no are also really difficult to model in the beginning, just because, particularly with accidental presses, if your learner accidentally presses yes or no, it's not always easy to model those words and follow through. So we'd advise against starting with those words, similar to what Janine just explained about more and all done. And then again, just to reiterate, we want to stay away from more abstract concepts like time-based concepts, emotions, and places. Again, just because they can be difficult and somewhat demotivating to model, especially when our learner is still trying to figure out how the system works. And also just going to pause here real quick just to check if any of our guides have any additional input regarding words we shouldn't start with.
I would just wanted to add, like with potty and poop, you really, for the most part, can't force your learner to go to the bathroom. Some service dogs and other dogs are trained to potty on command, but most animals don't potty on command. And so when they press it, you can't guarantee when you take them outside or they go to the litter box. You can't like throw them in the litter box and say, go to the bathroom. So you can't guarantee that the consequence is going to happen to the button press. So that's another reason potty and poop are difficult buttons.
Thank you so much.
I'll just pile on onto that comment too. If your learner is not brand new to your house, they already have a way to ask for a lot of these things. Like if you have a house trained dog, they have a way, whether it may not even be a jingle bell or whatever. They might just, my dogs kind of look at me and go hang out near the door. They might whine. They have a way of getting your attention. We found that a lot of learners, if they have a way that's working and you're putting this intermediary thing in between them where they have to press the button now to get the thing they used to be able to get easily, they're not going to think the button is a great new thing in their house. So think about things that would be new to them, like they suggested a new toy, or more of things that they already like that they would want more of in their life, or they would want more control over. So just things to think about. Go ahead, Calvin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I see Lisa raised her hand earlier. I'm happy to answer your questions now if you'd like before we move on to the next, but we are almost at Q&A. I'm just going to give it a second and see if Lisa would like to unmute herself quickly. might have been a mistake, so I'll move on. But if you would like to ask a question, you're most welcome to raise your hand again or pop it into the chat and we'll have a look for you. So this slide is regarding how to know when you've got it or when you're ready to move on to more abstract concepts. So what you're looking for are a solid percentage of intentional presses, which aren't just accidental. Just to pause there real quick, I absolutely love accidental presses. I feel that in our journey with Jason, it was the accidental presses that helped us most. We didn't do target training. I relied on the accidental presses and following through with those actions and modeling those words as a way of reinforcing the meaning of the words. I think it take a little bit longer, and perhaps this is why Jason prefers to sometimes press with his belly or other parts of his body. But I have noticed that when he's running or playing around the board, he's not pressing those buttons. So when he's pressing it with his belly or he's giving me a face press, I just find it the most adorable thing. And I still honor it because to me, he's put a lot of effort into pressing that button in his own unique way. So it's not mandatory to do target training. You can utilize accidental presses to your advantage and follow through on those actions. And sometimes that's a little bit more helpful or easier to follow through on. You're also looking out for a solid percentage of appropriate presses, so not just random. So in the beginning, I remember when Jason started pressing buttons, I'd get all excited thinking he knows exactly what he's pressing, but soon realized that it was more a case of him exploring the board and seeing what happens when he presses these buttons. And only after some time, I could see that he was connecting the dots. For instance, if he pressed his wet food button and the button sounded, he would run off to his bowl. And that indicated to me that he understood the meaning of the word. He knew that pressing the button eat meant food, and he went to his bowl to confirm what he was looking for. Lastly, you're looking for some independent presses without you sitting at the board. So in the beginning, you might notice that your learner is most active or seems to want to engage with you when you're at the board or when you're having a target training or just modeling session with your learner. And it can take some time for them to start pressing the buttons on their own without any prompting. So we do have a few tips and tricks for this on the community if you are ever stuck here. But ultimately, you want to continue modeling and following through on the words. And you should notice in time that they'll start soliciting you or recruiting you to come to the board when they need those things, as opposed to you prompting them to or asking them what they want. I'm also going to pause here just to check if our guides have any feedback on that particularly.
I would just also add that sometimes when you get an accidental press and then you provide the thing that they requested, sometimes they look at you like, why did you do that? And maybe you know what they really wanted. So do the thing that they pressed first so they know what the consequence of that button, what that button means. But then if you think you know what they really want, press that button and do that thing to show the buttons mean different things and also to help reinforce the meaning of each button. For example, Bert injured himself recently and hasn't been using the buttons in the most appropriate ways. And he'll go over to the board and he'll press topple, puzzle,